Hello, everybody. A memory palace has been destroyed, unfortunately. Makes me very, very sad. Hello, David. Thanks for being here today. And if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. I'm not sure what this is. Weird. But maybe we can get rid of it. Well, I guess not. Anyway, very interesting, strange effect today. This memory palace you see on the screen here has been with me for many, many years. I went to that school from preschool until grade 7. And wow, this is unbelievable that it's gone. My mom messaged me and said that the school has been burned to the ground. Apparently 3 days it burned and burned and burned and burned. And who, for all I know, it may still be burning. Good to see you, Crone Woman Walking. Thanks for being here. Wonderful to see you. Lady Chick 011 is here from the Bahamas. Wow. Good to see David. Thank you, everybody. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, and especially hit the thumbs up today for the death of one of my favorite memory palaces. Let me know in the chat if you'd like to see a drawing of this memory palace. I had to go deep into my memory journals to find it for you, and it's not really for you. It's actually to acknowledge the beauty and the glory of this school that has served as a memory palace for so long and so well. And if you're joining us, please also let me know in the chat where you are in the world, what you're doing, how you're feeling. And this is the opportunity. This is a public service for the public to talk about memory techniques, what they are, how they work, how you can use them to learn and remember more quicker in ways that are easier and fun and break some new ground. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Giordano Bruno's On Magic, Scott Gosnell's translation of this, and what it has to do with study hacks, and some things that I've been thinking on my mind, and share with you some things that we'll be doing on the study hacks session. So if you're interested in that, stick around. Talk about the choice factory as well in all of this, and just some interesting aspects in and out. But one of the things that is very, very interesting about quote unquote losing a memory palace is that it isn't lost at all. It's not lost whatsoever, because it's in the mind, and the exact structure is in the mind, and all the more so because I took the time to draw it out and to use it as a memory palace, which is very, very important. And I would suggest that the sooner everybody gets into the habit of drawing their memory palaces, the more you're going to have this magical relationship to your own mind and to your memory that strengthens everything you do with memory palaces and how you do it. And on that note of magic, it would fit into one of Giordano Bruno's versions of On Magic. Has anybody actually read this? This is Scott Gosnell's translation. If you haven't heard the episode of the Magnetic Memory Method podcast with Scott Gosnell, and if you're interested in Bruno, you'll definitely want to check that out. But it truly is magic. It is magic in the sense of transforming the world. And so part of what I want to do with study hacks is do a little bit of a test of transforming the world to see if that's actually possible. So if you haven't already, you're going to want to go to magneticmerrymethod.com/SHL to dive in, and we will get more into the good things that are behind all of this and why we're doing it, and the test to see if there's interest in it. And so far, so good, because this is part of the great war against the evil Dr. Forget and all those people out there who need to learn how to take action and just simply motivate themselves and make action happen so they can just quickly and simply draw memory palaces. So David says he hasn't read it yet. Well, I think that really just the introduction itself is worth the price of admission. And some of the things that Bruno says in there on magic are very, very interesting. Anyway, I'm mourning this memory palace here, but not mourning it too much because I've magically transformed it into my mind to an eternal tool. And I think it's the first time in my awareness something I've used as a memory palace has been destroyed. Although now that I think about it, another building I could use as a memory palace has also been destroyed. And I actually watched my dad destroy that building. And there's a kind of a funny story behind that, because my friend and I, his name was Clayton, and we used to go through an orchard. And about midpoint through this orchard, dirt trail, was an old chicken coop. I don't know why the chicken coop was in the middle of this orchard, but at the other end of the orchard was the home of the people who owned the orchard. And we used to go into that chicken coop, and we used to hide our magazines and stuff like that in there. We'd hide our cigarettes. We'd hide our, what do you call them, firecrackers. We'd hide stuff there. And one of the things that was very tragic in my childhood, very wounding and traumatic, not really tragic, was when these guys came, and they were sort of mean, grisly bikers, and they caught us up in there with all our loot, and they took our bikes, and they basically said, you know, you're gonna have to get your parents to come, you're trespassing on our territory and all this sort of stuff. And they didn't know that our dads were big bad bikers. So when the two Harley Davidsons showed up in front of this the house of these guys with the orchards, we got our bikes back real quick, and that was quite something. But in some sort of bizarre poetic justice revenge, my dad was tasked with the job of later, a couple years later, tearing down that house and turning the orchard into a street. Anyway, so there are two memory palaces that I could potentially use. I don't really remember that house, but I remember the chicken coop, and those could be two more additional memory palaces. So the point of this story really is that if you think through all your memory palaces, it will give you more potential memory palaces. And the more you do that, the more will come to mind. It's really, really fascinating how that works. And I've never thought about either that chicken coop or just even the balcony of this home where they took our bikes, because I never went into that house to my knowledge, except for when it was getting destroyed, because we walked through it before excuse me, my dad took the backhoe to it. He crushed it with a backhoe. But yeah, I never thought of those, but I could use both of those as memory palaces. Ujwal is here from India. Great to meet you here today, Ujwal. Hit the thumbs up if you're just joining us. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And so, enough about this school, but here's the memory palace drawing that I made out of it. And what a fascinating, wonderful place that was, and so fun to use. Nigel is in the house. Good to see you, Nigel. Wonderful to meet with you here today. Thanks for saying hello. And here we go. So, study hacks. What is this all about? Well, one of the things is it's September, and deep in my procedural memory is the love of back to school, at least in the North American imagination, school starting up in September every year. So I thought it would be nice to do something nice for students. And so if you would like to join us, make sure you go to magneticmerrymethod.com/SHL and register up for that session, and we will have a good time together. And I'll say some things about what's going to happen on that day in today's live stream. But as I was looking up my old memory palace drawing there that I shared with you, I found some other images that I thought were pretty interesting. So I thought I'd share some of my stories of getting A pluses, getting one D plus. It's a very, very fascinating story how you can get so many A pluses as I got. I'm going to show you every single last detail, but how you can get so many A pluses and A grades and then actually get a D plus. There's an interesting story behind this that will help students. It'll help give you some more confidence and courage what to do, because this was an unusual circumstance, and I was able to fight it in a way that didn't remove the grade, but still allowed me to get something that a lot of people would like, which is a degree, and this happens to be my PhD. So it's always been interesting to me. Many people have said, what's your PhD in? Where did you get it? Etc. And it is in humanities, the doctorate of philosophy. So studied for a lot of years just to get to the level of being able to enter a PhD. And that D plus had to be explained to them in order to proceed. which I thought was very interesting because it was an undeserved punishment from a professor who just simply didn't like me. But we'll get into that in a little bit here. But for anybody who's interested in more of this academic history of mine, you can always just go to York University and read the alumni page at the graduate program in humanities, where they've got this listing about me anyway. And enjoy right now is the key thing to take away from that page rather than anything else. But you really want to get that message through your head more than anything else. Enjoy right now, because that's all that we got. Anyway, I pulled up some images here of different aspects of my grades, which I thought would be fun to have a look at. So it's really weird to me that that I got a B in British American poetry and fiction. But I remember why that was, because I had to go to the hospital that year because I got quite ill with a bipolar manic high. And so how I managed to get A's in the other courses, I'm not entirely sure, but that one was a bit of a challenge because it was just a bit more rigorous than some of the other courses. And one of the things is that, and I really appreciate that it was more rigorous actually, but one of the things is that they just simply didn't agree with some of my conclusions about British poetry in particular, and some of the things that Thomas Hardy was saying in one of those poems. So I took a bit of a hit on that grade because I wanted to argue what I wanted to argue and not toe the line. But I remember that the teacher's assistant who ran the tutorial that I was in, he was very kind. He came to visit me in the hospital, and he gave me a novel as a gift, which I'll never forget. That was very, very nice of him to do so. I was in my concentration was so fractured and shattered, I was in no position to actually read it, but it was very, very kind. And it's just interesting as a sort of case study where you have these things like grades, which are just so worldly and so forth, but at the same time have great ethics and virtue behind them if they're held to a certain standard. And they had a particular standard, and I didn't necessarily agree with it. I took my bets, said what I wanted to say, and even if we didn't agree on how that I should have been judged in that particular course, he still came and saw me in the hospital and gave me this tremendous gift. So that was wonderful. But as you can see, I got A, B, and A in that particular collection of grades here on my transcript. I don't know how they collect them or why they collect them in that way, but that's very lovely. Now let's get into some A+ territory. So this is Shakespeare's contemporaries, A+. So everybody loves Shakespeare, right? But I sure like Shakespeare's contemporaries a lot more, and I'm glad that I took this course, and it was great to get that A+ in there. Monst is here. Good to see you, Monst. No problem. Nigel is asking, is it going to help in complex subjects like maths and sciences? Absolutely yes. So make sure not to miss out. I'll explain a little bit more about why and how exactly it's going to help in a minute. But let me know in the chat where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Hit that thumbs up. Let me know if you're actually interested in this tour through the through my grades. I'm kind of curious myself. One thing that astonishes me too is that I got a B+ in film and literature. I wound up being a professor of film studies, and I was surprised. I didn't remember that I got a B+ in that. But the professor, he was again like a standard above standards. He was really, really rigorous in that course, and it. As all grades do, it has a story behind it. And I remember he lost my final paper, and he actually called me on the phone and he said, "I've lost your final paper. I need you to bring it to me." And back then you had to print things. Like I don't think, and for some reason I don't think you could email documents at that time. And I don't think that even if you could email them that they were accepted. There was something about not being able to email it to him anyway, because email did exist, but he also called me instead of emailing. Anyway, I printed it out. I only had red ink because my black ink had gone out of the printer. So I went over there and I said, "Sorry, dude, but you're going to have to read it in red." So maybe that was part of my B+ there, but it was very nice. he invited me for dinner, and I stayed for dinner and met his better half, and then there was a film director that also came for dinner, etc. It was really interesting. And he wound up being the director of my first MA, which was very, very nice, or supervisor, better said. All right, next, there's that D+. So I'll tell you the story of the D+. And also, now we see the proper A+ for film studies there, filming literature and poetry of the United States, another A+, and a bunch of A's there for the other courses. Those were tough courses too. You can see that the average, for example, of the Kafka course was C+. Wow, amazing. And that, of course, was in 2 languages, that course, English and German. And that was quite interesting to study Kafka in German and English at the same time. All right, and Brecht, of course, I learned a lot about German as well there. Anyway, that D+ in science fiction, that guy just really didn't like me. He didn't like my conclusions about what happened there in the stories that we were reading in science fiction, the history we needed to understand about the genre of science fiction. And I don't know why that he didn't like my conclusions about these things, but when I went to apply to grad school, I had to account for this, and he had a bad reputation anyway, and I think part of my accounting for it it did not go unnoticed that it was his name beside my explanation, because he really got into political disagreements with students. The reason why I mention this is because if you go to university, you're probably going to face these kinds of conflicts. And there's a lot of egos in university. And one of the biggest study hacks you'll ever learn is to get your ego out of it, because it won't help you, especially in a world where a lot of professors are, their egos are really in it. And I was very fortunate to not have that many professors who were that way, but this individual in particular was. And the things that I wrote in my essays for that course really rubbed him the wrong way. And that's not right. It should be that we are graded on the merit of our work. In any case, I was able to, and I had to actually submit some of the essays in order to fight that grade, or to explain that grade away when I went to enter graduate school. And it was quite amazing that it was reassessed on the actual merits, which is the ability to make an argument correctly, or at least a well-structured argument. Whether it's correct or not is a different issue, and then be able to deliver that argument in a way that's clear and crisp and supported by evidence, and then conclude in a way that is persuasive. So that's the art and the craft of making arguments. All right, now on to graduate school. I don't know why I got a 0 there for the grade there, but I guess that's because it was an A+ in a different area, and another A+ in the fictionalized memoir, which was very, very good. And then we have all my grad school grades, 6,000 level courses, AA. It's just a P for the graduate seminar. And then a directed reading was another A. So that was just an interesting, fun tour to look through. That's just one of my transcripts from one university, but wonderful, wonderful to go through memory lane. And I would just encourage you again that if you ever have to take a hit like I did and get a bad grade, you have the future. And you can keep in mind what happened, how it happened, keep all your assignments and stuff like that, because they'll come in handy later if you need to, make a case for yourself and defend yourself. Because as you can see, my grades are very good throughout there. But this one, the only explanation really in that story is either, that I blew the course, or that there was some kind of butting of heads and ego involved. And so I was quite able to get my ego out of it and just present the evidence and get into graduate school anyway, which is very nice. And I had the support of some great letters as well from my previous professors. Now, on to study hacks. Who is it for? Let me say hello to Alberto here from Mexico. Good to see you, Alberto. Thanks for saying hello. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and if you have any questions whatsoever. Always enjoy hanging out with you. If you are interested in study hacks, make sure you go to magneticmarymethod.com/SHL. That stands for Study Hacks Live. And who is it for? Who is this program for? Rarzip7Z is here. Great. Whoa, what an amazing name. What a great little screen icon for yourself as well. Thank you for being here from America. Good to meet with you today. By the way, if you're here and you have never subscribed to this channel, hit subscribe while you hit that thumbs up, and let's rock and roll. Who is it for? Who is Study Hacks for? Well, it's for people who are not interested in learning from a video course. They want the training live. That's why it's live. I haven't done a live training since China 2016, and before that, London, Vienna, all over the place. Berlin several times, and we are going to not be able to do that because people would have to invest so much to fly to Australia, and I still want to do a live event. And so because of the way the nature of the internet works, we actually can. It'll be a little bit different, but let's see what we can do. It's better when we're in the room together. Actually, when I teach these things in Brisbane, it's a lot better, but I think it can be just as good and perhaps even better than better in the live environment. And so that's what this opportunity is about. Rarzip asked, wasn't Study Hacks Live in the newsletter the other day? Yes, indeed it was. And there's a bit of experimentation going on around it with reference to Bruno's on magic and some other matters that we can talk about. But this is one of the core things here. There's a lot of people out there who just aren't interested in video courses. It's not their style, and I get that. I understand that. The live trainings that I've done have really, really helped people because people miss details if they're not into video. People miss details if they're not into books. People miss details if the teacher isn't there to be able to respond to their questions in real time. And we can see how that works and make that happen, and that's what we're going to do on Study Hacks Live. So thanks to everybody who's already joined up for that, and it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. But this is primarily who it's for. So if you need it live, then make sure you get it, because I may never do this again online. And if I do it again, it certainly won't be under these conditions, which is to celebrate and to fulfill my own personal love of September and back to school season from many, many years, and perhaps to acknowledge the death of one of my most favorite memory palaces, burned to the ground. 3 days of burning. Wow, that's a mythical number, isn't it? This is a very, very special and extraordinary opportunity indeed, so take advantage of it if you want to. And with reference to this book, there's a bit of a test to see if the world operates in a particular way, and we'll see if we can bring Bruno together with economic theory. So who else is it for? Well, it's for people who have a driving ambition to master memory techniques for studies. And so if you don't, then this is not really the program for you, because it's, these are not techniques that are for people who are just, interested in knowing more about them. It's for people who really want to master them, who really want to figure out what they are, how they worked for the ancient people to memorize massive amounts of information, to do it quickly without humming and hawing and so forth, and to apply it to study, not languages necessarily, although we can talk about that if questions come up, because everything is language, right? But it's for people who have that driving ambition. Chanel is in the house. Good to see you, Chanel. Now, what do I mean by driving ambition? Well, that should be students who want to be better so they can better serve the world. Now, I don't know how you intend to serve the world, but if it's, just me, I want these skills for me, then, you're probably going to have a hard road, a much harder road than you need to have. The individual, I don't know this 100% to be true, but the individual who devotes themselves to being a servant of the world always hits the ground running, is always going to have the better advantage. It's a bit of mindset stuff, to be sure, and we'll talk about how you can do that. And it's also for people who not only know that they can do better and serve the world at a higher level, at a better level, but you actually crave for better. And this is very, very important. You think day in and day out about how you can be better to serve the world better. And that's a really important qualification. You will get nothing out of this if you're not that person. And I assume that everybody who follows this is that person. But just, for those who might not fit the bill, just wanted to point that out, because we're not here for kicking tires or humming and hawing about anything. We're about doing the best that we possibly can given our limitations. I got many limitations, got all kinds of problems. I shared a story earlier about being in the hospital there, and it took a lot of courage and guts to get myself back to university. It's pretty embarrassing to flip out and have a manic episode in public, even though I'm so glad the internet wasn't around the way that it is today, and that I've never had such a flip out again, because, that can be a problem. But it took a lot of courage. I had to go back and see some of those professors again, which was hard. Some of those fellow students again, which was hard. And I had to do it with mindset. So when SDFG says that he loves the mindset stuff, I've had to learn to have a good mindset, because the world is a tough place. The world is very, very challenging, and it's not something that really cares about you. It doesn't care whether you survive or you don't. You have to figure out how to be that better person and tackle it, and how you're going to serve that world, even if it's indifferent to your efforts sometimes. And we'll talk about actually how that you can see how it's sometimes not that indifferent to your efforts, which gets back to Bruno on magic. So that's been deep in my mind lately, amongst all the other things that are deep in my mind. And word power made easy is also in my mind, because word power can be made easy if you have the right tools. And it's amazing that book is so old, and yet that long ago people had similar problems of expression that they have now. And it's a memory issue. It's everything's just a memory issue at the end of the day. So if you crave for better, this is it. And ultimately, you want to be liberated from unnecessary forgetting. Isn't that the core problem here? Maybe, maybe not. Could be that it's deeper than that. But one of the things that I've always wanted was to not forget stuff, and to be able to remember things when I wanted to remember them. It's very, very important. And the reason why it's so important is because it crushes one's confidence if you let it, when you forget stuff. And when you're sitting in an exam situation and you forget things, this is just the most horrible feeling in the world, because you spent time on it and you should have been able to remember it. So we can liberate you from that problem. And it's not that difficult if you are the kind of person who's qualified to actually learn and use memory techniques. So this program is, and SDFG says that sucks for sure. It more than sucks. It's the worst thing in the world, and it's also completely unnecessary. I don't believe that it's an IQ problem. I don't believe that it is this person is better than that problem. I don't even particularly believe that it's always an issue of the chips stacked against you because of unfair testing. Although unfair testing does exist, and if there is anything out there that really needs to be considered here, it's unfair testing. And we can talk about that too, because there's some strategies for that have some of those grades that you saw there. I was able to get them precisely because I have strategies for dealing with unfair testing. And unfair testing doesn't go away. Even in a recent exam that I sat for, there was something that, it's not exactly unfair testing, but it was pretty crude. I was surprised that it happened, and even in 2019. And I still sit for exams from time to time because I go and take courses. I love it. And I'm shocked, though, that I still see things that I saw in my university years that are absolutely anti-intellectual. They're anti-student success. They have no place there, but they exist, and we have to have strategies for dealing with them. All right. So Kota, good to meet you here today. Kota, I have more than 200 questions, so how many locations do I want to create? That's a good question, and something we will definitely cover in Study Hacks. In general, here's the answer. You have to find that out. And how you find it out is by learning these techniques and practicing them. And in some cases, you might need 200 stations in, say, 10 memory palaces or maybe 20 memory palaces. There's no real fixed answer to that. The answer is, where are you with the memory skills right now? And could you use some of the more advanced techniques? Maricela is in the house. Good to see you, Maricela. Thanks for being here. Thanks for saying hello. And I believe I saw your registration for Study Hacks. Thank you for joining us. That is wonderful. And one of the things that I've noticed, and one of the reasons that I'm doing this too, is I've noticed these super chat behaviors. And one of the things that I've noticed about the super chat behaviors is that they always come from people already in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass and the Mastermind, contributing more. So that was part of the influence here, which I think is very, very interesting. You know, I've tried some things with t-shirts and stuff like that. T-shirts aren't going to help improve your memory. What they might do is remind you to help you, not forget to use memory techniques, but only training and practice and being inspired to continue practicing is what's going to help you improve your memory. So to Kota's question, really what you want to do is think about the nature of the questions, think about the nature of the answers, think about where you're at with the skills right now, and then build the strategy to support that. But let go of the need to know the answer. If you just want like a sure answer, then yes, one station per piece of information. But that's not the way the memory techniques work. That's not the way knowledge works. It's not a one-to-one correspondence. So you need different and better strategies. And that's what we're going to talk about in Study Hacks, to be prepared so that you get it done one way or the other and not get lost in the numbers. So numbers, thinking numerically is very, very helpful if you use it right, but it also can be a trap. So you don't want to rely on calculations. That leads to speculative mnemonics, which I've talked about that problem many times before on the podcast. Samay is in the house. Good to see you, Samay. Thanks for your question. Let me get a drink here, and I'll answer that for you. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And I think it'd be really neat if YouTube added something like an applaud button, like they have on Medium. So we can go, I like that. I like that idea. Let's get in touch with YouTube for an applaud button. So Samay says, Anthony, I wanted to know how you can delete a specific event from memory. I really tried to, but failed, so I thought I could ask you. Yeah, let's talk about that. Lady Chick 011 registered for Study Hacks, hoping it will help me. Well, thank you, Lady Chick. I look forward to meeting you there, and I'm confident it will help you. The goal is to help you help yourself, to really understand the strategies, what work you need to be doing. It's not really work, though. It's fun and play in your memory palaces and in your mind. So I'm really excited to help you out at that event. And all the information is at magneticmemorymethod.com/SHL. If you qualify, if it's for you, we've gone through that. So if you need to catch the replay and see what the qualifications are, then please do. They're very, very simple, and I assume they are for people who are interested. So to Samay's question, Anthony, I wanted to know how you can delete a specific event from memory. I really tried, but failed, so I thought I could ask you. So we have a live stream replay on the YouTube channel where I talk about this, and my advice hasn't really changed, but it has some nuances. So what would you prefer, everybody here who's live? Would you prefer to continue to talk about Study Hacks, or would you like to rehearse what I said on that previous live stream in a very short order, and then add some of the nuance? Let me know in the chat. I am so interested more and more and more in what actually gets people to lift their fingers and type some stuff. So I'm just going to test that a little bit and answer Rarzip's question. And so the answer, Samay, is you can go and find that previous live stream about dealing with upsetting, challenging memories. There's quite a couple of them, and recently we've talked about it. Or if we get enough interest here, we will spend some time on it right now. But I want to do that with the consensus, let's say, and the interest of the majority, or do we get crickets? Always very interested in testing this. There's always the 80-20 rule that seems to govern everything, which is an important tool, an important mindset concept to know about yourself, to know about the world, etc. And I don't know that the wisdom of the crowds or voting or anything like that is actually the way to go about things. But if you've been on any of these live streams before, I have been testing it quite a bit to just see if we can, guide the ship with more interaction from people. Rarzip asks, are live streams usually at this time? No, these free live streams are just when I feel like doing them. And something like Study Hacks is for the people who would like to have a scheduled session so that they can anticipate and rock on up at a designated time to be prepared, ready for notes and so forth. I've thought a lot about the scheduling of YouTube live streams, but so far I have not decided to go that way. Rather, I like to meet in a timely fashion with those most interested in having things scheduled and then dive into the trainings, as opposed to having the promotion of mental literacy and memory techniques. It's just largely what these live streams are. I understand that they're random, but the replays are there for people to engage with at their own time and to work with. The course, the free course, is at magneticmarymethod.com/YT, and that is on demand anytime that you like. It's pretty amazing how many thousands of people have gone through that. I check the stats sometimes. 80-20 rule is just incredible to see play out over the years. And the stats show that many people take it sometimes several times. And of course, the stats are even more impressive inside the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass itself, which is awesome. So Crone Woman Walking is going to register for the Study Hacks session. Great, great, great. So David and Rarzip would rather talk about the study hacks. Okay, so here's the thing. Samay didn't chime in to talk more about his initial question. We don't even know if he's still around, and we have a very, very small majority here. I don't think Parliament actually works in many countries, or Congress works that well, but we'll try to go with the vote here and just plow on with the program here. So 3 out of 14 would be 21. Hey, 80-20 rule, right? Very, very good. But I don't think that 3 people answered. 2 people said study hacks, and Crone Woman Walking said she's getting registered for the study hack session, which is excellent. So we'll carry on, and if Samay wants to cast another vote, and if anybody else wants to dive into this topic about deleting memories, then let me know in the chat. And if you want to, if you're watching the replay and you want to cast your vote after the fact, please go ahead and do that. So, okay, we got another vote for study hacks. Great, great, great. Samay says I will go with study hacks too. Okay, so what is study hacks going to do? Well, it's going to get some problems out of the lives of people who need to learn and study. So the goal of the program is to remove your stress about limited time. Time is not limited when you have tools that accelerate your ability to make connections in your mind, to learn quicker and faster so that you have more free time, and be able to, and I kid you not, if you really, really practice with these techniques, you will find that you're able to, not always, but again, it's 80-20 rule. You're able to sometimes just use the memory techniques once and remember that stuff for as long as you need it. And that's not going to happen all the time, but you're going to have an 80-20 rule effect. And I call this in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass the Rhizomatic Effect. And what that means is that you basically have two kinds of structures. You have the deep structure, and then you have the surface structure. So it's the difference between the trees and the roots. What is different than what's more powerful, the top of the tree or the roots, the below stuff, below the surface? And in some cases, that will be different from tree to tree and so forth. And here's the thing to consider with all of this, is that there's a kind of plant that lives under the ground called a rhizome, which has these bulbs that just pop up, and they're decentralized. They don't necessarily connect with each other, and how it works, I don't exactly know. But instead of being top down, it's decentralized, and it makes spontaneous connections. And that's what memory techniques really allow you to do, is make these connections on the surface that are just as strong as a tree with branches together, while underneath the surface, new knowledge is being created because of what's called elaborative encoding and then memory consolidation. And so if you use these techniques in particular ways, you're going to get the best out of the 80-20 rule, and you're going to remember a lot more, a lot faster, with less heavy loading, which doesn't mean that you want to do less application of the techniques. That's not what's being suggested here, but rather you're going to get more out of them, and you're going to make more connections. And then in the memory consolidation, because of the elaborative encoding, you're going to learn more, you're going to remember more, and you're going to get this lift, and you're going to get some basically free connections. It's going to feel like it's free, and it's going to be fun, and you're going to be excited because you're going to get dopamine spikes out of the whole process, and it's going to be amazing. So Crone Woman Walking, thank you so much for your super chat. And this is one of the things that's inspiring the Study Hacks live session, is that people are making super chats yourself on the sessions here. And so I'm exploring some of these options, a bit inspired by Sam Harris as well, with what he's doing with the Waking Up program. And just testing, seeing what happens. And so far, very delighted. So thank you so much for supporting this work. And I'm always amazed that it's the people who already have the masterclass who are supporting it. That's an interesting effect. And notice that things like the podcast and the YouTube channel and so forth is really for the masterclass people to give back and to support you. All right. So Nigel has registered. Thank you, Nigel, for joining us. Really appreciate that. Crone Woman Walking votes for Study Hacks. We'll watch the replay tomorrow morning, and super chats. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your support. Always really appreciate it. So David asks, will Study Hacks Live be available after the September 21st event, maybe for a fee? I can't make the September 21st event, but I am a Magnetic Memory Method member. Yeah, it's going to be available as a what's called a replica replay, which means you can go through it as many times as you want, really. And then there'll be there's going to be some great things there. Let me say, this is not some whiz bang super powerful marketing thing, but I've got a special set of bonuses for the people who are there, and you will be able to go through it again. And well, thank you, SDFG. That's a wonderful proof of concept there with the support on the super chat. I really appreciate that. And it's one of the ways that we're going to be able to grow this community, to be able to make it work for the long haul and help the maximum amount of people to get together. And I really, really appreciate the support. So if you're interested in this program and you want to reduce your stress and maximize your time, that's how we're going to get problems gone. And that's how we're going to get, that you're so excited when you're already in the masterclass, you're supporting it more because of the value that it creates. And SDFG says, well deserved. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I mean, I don't want to bog things down with so many thank yous, but you have no idea how much I appreciate the opportunity to do this work. And it's only because the world makes it possible. And on magic, right? I'm not sure that, you got to read Bruno's definitions of what magic is. And it's certainly not magic in the sense that one would think. Nor all of the definitions, but I am very interested in doing magic, so to speak, in the world and helping people transform. It's about transformation. It's about changing yourself from one state to another state. Is it really possible for you, if you follow some simple steps, to reduce your stress and maximize your time? It absolutely is possible. However, the question is, how are you going to get yourself to do it? Well, that's why I gave you those qualifications earlier. This is the kind of person that Study Hacks is for. So Psycho Mistro says, we definitely appreciate your efforts. Well, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate knowing that. And Kirigami is here. Good to see you, Kirigami, as always. All right. And it's not about getting things right necessarily. It's about diving in and being consistent. So the other thing that Study Hacks is going to do for you is we're going to eliminate boredom and struggle. Because struggle is boring. It's boring. It's boring. It's absolutely boring. So we can get rid of that. We can get rid of it. And you know what? Here's the thing. If you're a student and you're a serious student, you're going to encounter books, articles, videos, etc. that are boring. There are boring things in the world. There's no getting around that. And when I come to a text and I find that it's boring, then I need to have a strategy that I can get through it. Memory techniques do that. There is no more boredom. There's no more boredom. If there is, it's boredom that lasts for a second and then it's gone. And to have that strategy is very, very important. And to have it whenever you want it is very, very important. Thank you for asking about this, SDFG. This is On Magic by Giordano Bruno. It's a translation by Scott Gosnell. It's actually a series of essays. On Magic is one of those essays. For those of you who don't know Giordano Bruno, he helped us have the memory tradition. He was burned at the stake in 1600, not for his memory skills, but he wrote some treatises on how to use memory techniques, how to use them in particular ways, and it belongs, roughly speaking, to the Hermetic tradition, and there's a number of laws and principles that are very interesting in the Hermetic tradition. I'm doing a large research project on it now, and because Scott had been on the podcast, I hadn't checked out with his other, I hadn't caught up with his other translations of Bruno since that time, and I really needed to, so I ordered a bunch, and so this one came, and he had translated De Umbris Iderum, which is a wonderful, wonderful text that will teach you so much about these techniques. And it's very hard to find copies of it. And he put it, and Bruno stumps a lot of people because he'll have diagrams like this and use this as a memory palace, etc. And people will want to do what he did when you really need to understand the underlying principles of what it is that he's suggesting you do, as opposed to trying to copy it. Because we know from the great advice of Gary Weber in Happiness Beyond Thought, one of the best books you will ever read, I'm quite confident, if you read it and do what it says, we know that you can't emulate the teacher. And it's one of the study hack techniques that you need to understand, which we're going to get into in the training, is to not try to emulate others, but rather to understand the models and then understand how to experiment with them and make them work for you, knowing that what works for others is not necessarily going to work for you because you're you, and they are they, and the world only needs one of them. So that's a very, very important principle. So Maricela says, in the study hacks, there will be a replay. Yes, Maricela. And there, if you have interruptions or visits during that time, then, you'll just need to catch up with that replay, which will be made available for you. And we're going to have a wonderful time. Like, it is largely for this live experience, so you can get your questions answered. And incidentally, it's going to be structured so that the teaching happens, then there's questions, then a quick pause, then teaching, then questions, then a pause. We'll go through that in a second, but it's not going to be a chat session. It's not going to be like one of these live streams where we have the wonderful opportunity to be quite discursive and roam around different topics and ask for you to vote on what you want to talk about, etc. It's going to be like I would do a live seminar. I've done many, many before. If you're skeptical about my ability to hold live seminars, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But I taught at university for a number of years, and not only for a number of years, but under the auspices of a Mercator grant, which, is a testament to what it is that my academic career amounted to, because they don't just throw that out to anybody. Psychomistro says, missed that title on happiness. So it's called Happiness Beyond Thought by Gary Weber. Please do make time in your life to read this and put the ideas into practice. All right. Happiness Beyond Thought is such an important book. I suggest that you not only pay it its due, but follow up with other of Gary Weber's teachings. They're so powerful. They're so powerful. You're very welcome, Psycho Mistro. Thanks for asking. One of the things that I really encourage and admire in students is asking questions. Out for Presidents. I love that name. Says, I just purchased Study Hacks Live and can't wait to hear about your techniques. I'm ready to commit to deep, lasting learning. Thanks for sharing so much of your knowledge. Thanks for joining us, Out for Presidents. I'm really honored and delighted and look forward to seeing you there. Rarzip says, how should I come to prepare for Study Hacks Live? Well, the ideal thing really, if you want, is to make sure you have at least the free course under your belt and have a journal ready to take notes when we're there. And if you've at least gone through the free course, then you have questions. And even ideally on top of that, go through the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass, at least the master plan, if that's right for you, so that you then can ask your questions based on what you've done. But if you don't have the ability to do that, then that's fine as well. There's going to be a mix of people who are already in the masterclass. Many have already signed up, and they're very, very good people to have around because they've done all of this before. They understand what the Magnetic Memory Method is. They use it. And, if you've ever seen Christian Fitzharris's Brain Games song, not only, speaking of on magic, not only has his memory improved and he's working on memorizing poetry and stuff like that, and he's been on the YouTube channel to talk about how he's memorizing poetry, but he wrote an entire rap called Brain Games, which he memorized to talk about what this teaching has meant to him. Now, I helped, I contributed a couple of lines to it, and we sort of polished it together, and I acted as producer along with Ali, who edited it to make the images and so forth. But that's just an amazing testament. Like, someone spent that much time to write something and memorize it about the effect that this has had. Very, very interesting. So those kinds of people will be with us on this live, and they're going to have the benefit of having been through the training before, so you can come prepared with that. But at the bare minimum, I would make sure you've gone through the free training at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. And if you can, go through at least the master plan in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. And then when you're there, have notes, have some water with you. If you like coffee, coffee, this is water, but whatever your preferred beverage is. I do not recommend alcohol. I do not recommend smoking marijuana. I do not recommend anything other than you prepped. And what we're going to do is give you the knowledge, and answer questions in a very, very structured manner. And you will have a syllabus that you can download as well that are going to have some additional resources for you. We'll talk about that in a second, so that you're able to have a real asset that you can go through and refer to for the rest of your life. But the real asset's going to be the notes that you take, the plan that you make, and what you do with the knowledge. I can't be there to make you do things with the knowledge as much as I might like to, but then once you have the knowledge, you can get more and practice. And that's how you're going to eliminate stress. And that's how you're going to change your perception of time. My perception of time is very, very different than most people's perception of time. I did my PhD in record time. I was the first person to graduate in the year that I started. And I graduated against all odds because I was dealing with a mental illness. I was dealing with all kinds of disruptions in my life. I was dealing with a dismal circumstance where my dissertation supervisor actually told me, he gave me the talk, which is, there's probably not going to be a job for you at the end of this. The university world has changed, and I just want to be transparent with you about that. And that shook me to my core. I won't deny it. I needed to find a mindset for it, because that was heartbreaking to learn that so much had shifted in the university world that it would be so unlikely. Now, I did wind up getting a job. Not only that, I got the best possible job under the auspices of a research grant that I wouldn't have gotten if I hadn't been able to demonstrate my skills and learn German very, very quickly. And so that was powerful to have these techniques. And I really, really want everybody to be able to have them. And that's part of this initiative. So make sure you go to magneticmarymethod.com/SHL if you haven't already, and get registered and join the fine people who are already registered and who have registered today, such as Out for Presidents. And notice in his comment there that he is committed to deep, lasting learning. And I'm committed to making sure you have deep, lasting and learning. And every little amount that people do in their lives to keep this tradition of the memory techniques alive in their practice helps the entire planet, and it helps me continue helping you as well. So I hope that answers your question about how to be prepared for RZIP7Z. And let's get into some more chat here. Kirigami says, we'll definitely be needing these memory techniques. I have a quiz in one SRCC, one of the top colleges in India. A bit scared. Well, we can help you deal with fear as well. So thanks for that. Better than think about how you can reduce it. Out for President said, I made my first Memory Palace using the free course. I haven't had a chance to test it with Brilliance Breakthrough by Eugene Schwartz, but I definitely will. Oh, wow. It's great that you know Eugene Schwartz. That's wonderful. And yeah, you're going to have a lot of fun applying it. That's what this is for. It's to apply it to different things. So wonderful, wonderful. SDFG says, I love your questioning techniques. Any source for learning how to ask better questions? Yeah, we're going to go through that. That's a huge part of what we're going to talk about. And so at the basics, you want to learn the Feynman technique. And in brief, what that is let's say you don't understand something. You write a short little essay about what it is you don't understand. Then you ask yourself, how could I come to understand this better? Then, if you haven't answered your question, which 98% of the time you probably will, you then go to the authority, your professor or an expert or whatever, and you lay out the story of what you did on your own and see if you can get some insight from them. Because, and I tell you this as a person who receives hundreds of questions every week, there are people who won't lift a finger to answer their own questions, and yet the only answer is in them lifting a finger to answer their own question. The answer is in the action. And so when people come to me with questions and their question is, here's what I've done so far on my own, what am I missing? I'm able to actually answer them with substance and structure in a way that I can't answer those who just say, can you give me some tips? Tips for what? I mean, all the tips are on magneticmarymethod.com at magneticmarymethod.com/YT. That's all you need, right? And that's the self-study. You've got to apply these sorts of things. But if you really want guidance and help, what you need to do is describe what it is that you've done. So how to ask better questions starts with documenting what it is that you have done based on what you don't understand. So describe what you don't understand. That can be a bit tricky to get into action in the beginning, but just try it. Try it a couple of times. How I tried to answer it. I've been trying to answer what I didn't understand about it for 2.5 years. Now much longer than that, actually. And it's amazing the adventure and how much that I've described it has been part of answering the question. And never forgetting the key point in this book that you cannot emulate the path of the teacher. Test something, test it for at least 90 days. So for the next 90 days, if you want to learn how to ask better questions, start by defining what it is you don't understand in writing. If you want a metric, 250 to 300 words minimum. You haven't really even tried to describe what you don't understand if you don't have that many words on the page. Do it with a pen, not a computer. And then see if you can't answer your question just in that process alone. Then chart out a path, how that you could, what are the 3 things you could do to answer that question? So it could be read a Wikipedia page. It could be look at the bibliography in the back of the book I'm reading for an additional resource. It could be going and talking to someone else who's taking the course with you. I don't know what it will be, But there's a way for you to come up with at least 3 steps to solve your own problem once that you've adequately described what it is you don't understand. If that doesn't work, then you go to the individual who is teaching you, and you show them the documentation of how you've tried to solve the problem on your own. And they'll be much, much better able to go, there's the problem, because you have enabled them to see the territory. See you, Rarzip7Z. See you, Kirigami. Thanks for being active with us here today. If you're just joining us, with us, you want to take the free course, and you can get it done in 9 days, definitely, for sure. All right. Sorry I didn't answer that as immediately as would have been convenient, but if you're with us, now you have the answer, and if not, hope you got the course anyway. The world, a fast-rushing ocean of activity. SDFG says, very helpful. Okay, I will try it. I stumbled upon this nebulous method, but now this confirms. Yeah, it's huge. Now, there are other ways to ask better questions, and one of the special bonuses I have for people who will be with us for Study Hacks is going to help you, because it goes beyond just asking better questions, but just thinking better. So that's coming up for those who attend, and I look forward to giving you that special bonus. Now, the other thing that we're going to do, I skipped a slide, is we're going to get rid of brain fog and mental dullness. We're just going to completely evaporate it. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is to make sure that you have some of the precision techniques that students need. They need them so badly. Young people, as I did, will tend to ignore these, but I think it's very important that we at least cover them so you can hit the ground running. It should be very important. All right, so we're also going to get rid of unstructured thinking, and we're going to replace it with clarity, precision, and unwavering focus. What is clarity? What is precision? Well, it is detail, and it is being able to think clearer and be sharper so that you're able to really, really mean what you say and say what you mean. And those are 2 skills that come from structured minds. Minds that are all loopy and goopy and not able to formulate thoughts and ideas and so forth, they have troubles with this. And it's because their minds are not structured. They do not have processes. They do not have the ability to even remember the processes that will lead them towards clarity and precision and focus. Because getting to a state of focus is itself something that requires structure. And you need to get into your deep procedural memory, so to speak, processes that will get you there so you have it on demand. So how is Study Hacks going to do this for you? Well, we're going to learn how to create magnetic missions and supporting systems for learning fast. We're going to learn how to create mental associations and develop your toolkit for making those associations quickly through the development of magnetic lists. We're going to talk about the memory palace and the pillar technique. We're going to talk about recall rehearsal. We're going to make it fun. We're going to make it easy, and we're going to make it irresistible so it's in your procedural thinking. It's how you approach information. It's what you do in the world by default because you've trained yourself to do it. Then we're going to do some advanced topics and strategies. We'll cover virtual memory palaces, reusing memory palaces, and some other memory techniques that'll be useful for you. We'll go through scheduling, motivation, discipline development, and positive habit formation. All your questions will be answered. We're going to give you the replay. There'll be a downloadable syllabus and some other resources, including some very special bonuses like how to forget negative and intrusive thoughts that disrupt your focus, optimizing your diet and your sleep for better memory. As I said, the Feynman technique, there's a bit more to it, and it will help you get to that A+ level if you're a student. And of course, this is primarily focused for students, but if you don't have A+ that you need to get in the future, I think you'll benefit from it as well. We'll talk about magnetic meditation for next level concentration and memory, and there's going to be some simple drills for exercise that really pack light and accelerate your progress. So that's what we'll be covering on this live session. Miss it at your own risk. And thank you, everybody, for joining me today. If you have any questions, I'll be around a little bit. Thanks to everybody who has interacted with the 3 keys to short-term memory improvement video. Really appreciate that. And if you missed it, you're missing out on some incredible suggestions for how to remember where your keys are. Not only that, but how to use elaborative encoding. And I hope to see you on Study Hacks. Let's see here. Also on the blog and the podcast, we released a new piece that is all about semantic memory, which is a very fascinating topic, a bit heavy on the science, but I wanted everybody to at least have the chance to hear it. And James told me in the comment section there, he was the first commenter, that he thought that it was very, very helpful, which I appreciate. Everybody who leaves comments on the blog, please do so if you check it out. And so study hacks at magneticmemorymethod.com/SHL. Hope to see you there. Rarzip7Z says, sounds amazing. Listen, I'm only really going to do this once. It is a bit of an experiment. I really should not make it so under these conditions, really. But I want to do it as a special for back to school and make it possible for people who may not otherwise be able to do it, but also make it possible for people like we saw on today's live stream to contribute more if they want to. And one of the reasons for doing that is because I'm very influenced by people I admire, like Sam Harris, who makes such things possible, and not exactly the way that he does it. But I was reading this book, The Choice Factory, and it had some ideas of things, ways to think about the world, and as I mentioned, on magic and studying Hermeticism and so forth, and things that you could do to make the world potentially change. I think there's a lot of woo-woo to it. I think there's a lot of pseudoscience to it. But how do you know if you don't try things, if you don't experiment, if you don't explore? How do you know? So I'm not going to get into all the ins and outs of it, but I'm very, very interested. And I'm interested in seeing what's already happening. And I'm interested in seeing what will happen and trying new things, seeing what might be good. Because a lot of people tell me, if only you would make this just for students, if you would direct it at that, this and that outcome would happen. And yeah, those outcomes that they mentioned would be very, very nice. But at the same time, I don't see that that's the way that the world works, the way that people suggest those things. But maybe we can try some experiments and see what will happen. See if magic is real. Bruno seems to think so. And very interesting. On magic. I really enjoy reading Bruno, and I'm so grateful to Scott Gosnell for making him readable texts that we probably would otherwise not have access to. Out for President says, hi Anthony, I'd like to know how to reduce concepts into a single keyword for my mind maps. I tried to do it, but the keyword aren't clear enough to trigger a recall. Thank you for that question. What is a concept that you're dealing with? If we can deal with some specifics, that'll make my answer much more specific. And remember the Feynman technique, right? So dude, I need help on that too. Great. So mind mapping is something that I do very, very frequently. And the Study Hacks program is on a mind map. It was mind mapped, and the fact that it's happening was mind mapped. And Tony Buzan is on my head as well, in my mind for this. And wow. Great guy. So, if you don't know this already, probably some of you do, I have his brain cell on my desk at all times. He gave me one of his brain cells. Isn't that amazing? And I keep it here to inspire me, maybe part of my magic, and to always keep your brain cells in my mind. And sometimes, my answer to your questions must be questions. And he was very good at helping people ask the right questions. But in terms of mind mapping, I know the rules of it very, very well. And one of the things that we need to think about is, what is it that you're doing? How would you describe what you're doing with the keywords? What are the concepts? What are the keywords? This is our opportunity now to jam on the topic. So let's see in the chat here if we got more details. Rarzip said that he needs help for that too. Upper President said, have you tried to turn your problem into a keyword, i.e. turning a diet strategy into the word diet on your main branches? Chronoman Walking says, my France trip is getting close and I'm still confused about using memory palaces for learning French. I can do it for individual verbs, but what about actual talking? Okay, let's talk about that a bit. SDFG says, what was about to jet, now my favorite subject, mind mapping. Okay, great. Chronoman Walking says, I'm memorizing a French poem. Am I wrong for waiting till I get to France and learn by immersion? No, please don't wait till you get to France. So we got mind mapping to talk about. We've got French immersion versus doing stuff now to talk about. Since these are coming from questions who are joining us for Study Hacks, let's get into this. And let me see. What's the best way to sort of tackle this? I don't quite have an example yet of the concept that you're working with out for presidents. So give me a concept that you're working with so we can work with specifics, and then we'll see how we can deal with this in a mind map. Now, in terms of learning French, so here's the way that I would think about this. You're in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass, so get the vocabulary builder going for yourself. And then knowing what you know about the principle of alphabetization and the principle of word division, start to nail down the core vocabulary there. Do you have to use every single word there? No. If you go in a structured manner, that's great, but you kind of want to think this in your mind. What are the words that are going to help me the most right now? How do you do that? Well, you get your memory journal out and you start to think just with reference to the actual vocabulary builder that I've created for you in collaboration with some of the world's best leading polyglots and language learners who have personally coached me in how to do this. Get that out and say, what is it? Is it going to be memorizing verbs or adjectives or nouns? Or how am I going to structure this for myself? What are the words that are going to make the biggest dent right now? And one of the ways that you can really help yourself is get on iTalki or italki, as some people pronounce it. Have some regular meetings with language learners, and they'll help you figure out what you need right now, because you're going to be in a situation of speaking, and you're going to say, oh, I wish that I knew how to say this right now, right? And, this happens, it's a two-way sort of thing. It's like, oh, I wish I understood what that person is saying right now, and I wish I knew how to say this right now. And then you have your memory journal always nearby, and you chart that out, and then you figure out what it is. And so you've got sort of three different paths going on here at the same time. You got your regular daily encoding of the vocabulary that you need the most right now from the Magnetic Memory Method vocabulary builder in the masterclass. Then you have the regular speaking that you're attempting to do and confronting what it is you don't know right now, and then finding out what it is and memorizing it. And then you have also, oh, I'm hearing this and I really want to know that. And so you feed yourself continually on a sort of cycle, and that's going to help you grow. And your reference to the core vocabulary helps, because when you know how to memorize individual words in memory palaces, you can add phrases to those words, right? Which is part of the big five of learning. So it's just an ongoing process. And at some point you break through and you start to change your relationship to what's going on, and the journey will change a little bit. You'll be memorizing more words on the fly. You'll be able to immediately turn them into sentences because you have now, how would you say this, absorbed that deep structural network of what the grammar is, not from studying grammar books, but from observing the operational grammar through memory, through use of the big five, right? So that's some guidance for you, and I hope that it helps. But please don't wait until you get to France. I've been to many, many countries in my life, and you will be so engaged with so much stimulation that you'll have a much finer language learning immersion experience by having more in advance. Your pattern recognition will be so much more switched on, and you'll just get more out of it the more you can prepare in advance. And look, there's no getting around this. This is a disciplinary effort. It's a disciplinary effort to sit down and say every day, what are the 5, 10, 15 words that are going to get me the furthest, the fastest? A lot of people won't want to do that. They won't want to work with a vocabulary builder. But Norman Lewis here, back in the day, just for English, I'm reading this right now. It's amazing how so many decades ago, this wisdom is in there. It's just like, pick your battles and pick them intelligently. And then you'll build a grid. And that grid will help you grow so much faster. Imagine trying to grow a tomato garden in a patch of land this big. It's not going to happen. But if you can make your land bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, then those vines, if you imagine the seed as being vocabulary, and then the actual plant starting to be the phrases and the iterations, and then the conversations, the fruit. Well, if you could just get enough seeds distributed around, and then you're adding phrases, and then you're having conversations in the fruit. Like, it's not the perfect metaphor here. There is no perfect metaphor. But you need to have a self-building engine of quote-unquote fluency. So, vocabulary is the fuel that builds the actual engine that lets you get onto the highway to stop at the fueling centers to get more fuel that builds the engine that lets you take more and more trips. So you say you need the limitless pill. Indeed, indeed. But you have all the resources that are there for you, and it's just a matter of applying those principles. The principle of alphabetization, the principle of word division, the bridging figure principle, and then also the 80-20 rule, which is just what is the actual stuff that I need right now to get the furthest, the fastest. And I know what that challenge is like. I know what it's like to want to have it all. I made that mistake with German, and I wound up confusing people about their own language, and being in these fascinating conversations where like, no, Simperlich really is a word in German, or Abgebagger really is a word in German. Well, we don't use that word around here, boy. And it's just like, okay, but it's in your dictionary, and like nobody really cares. They don't want to have that conversation, and there's nothing lost from knowing those words, right? They're just not. It's just not necessarily the best way of going about it. And when I switched and learned, and I never forget meeting Ollie Richards in Berlin at the Polyglot gathering and learning about this different way that you could go about selecting vocabulary. I still love to play around with dictionaries. I think the dictionary is one of the most amazing tools in the world, but I've been so blessed to develop these the vocabulary builder with the help of some of the world's best. And it helped me so much more just to buckle down, work on that vocabulary builder, and always think every time I approach it, what's the 20% or what's the 10 words today that are going to get me the furthest, the fastest, and then constantly observe, what is it I wish I could say right now, figure that out, and what is it they're saying that I wish I could understand. It's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing how that works. Very, very fun. All right. Out for President said, I read a few books on copywriting and wanted to internalize the research process. The concept is to gather material from the market and then come up with an approach to write copy. So I tried to use the word diving into the market and coming up to the research with an idea. The keyword is dive. The concept is diving into the market while looking for pearls. Pearls are the big idea that will resonate. Okay, so let's tackle this. Thank you for those details. Now, is that really a concept? So you've framed it as a concept, but is that a concept or is that actually a process? So maybe if you're approaching it as a concept, mind mapping isn't the right tool to memorize that. It might be that what you need to do is use a memory palace and have that memory palace help you without a mind map. Because mind mapping may be causing you to conceptualize things that are not concepts. This is a process. It's steps. So, yes, looking for big ideas is done by research. And there's a number of ways that you do market research in order to come to the surface to an idea. And if you want to memorize that step, then I wouldn't mind map that myself. Rather, what I would do is I would use the mind map to help me unpack how the big ideas can be expressed in the most direct and efficient way. So I see the mind map not as a memory tool. Tony Buzan changed his way that he did mind mapping. He started to not see it as a memory tool. He started to see it as a tool of mental organization and idea generation. And I think that's very, very correct. Now, it can be used as a a memory palace. And that's a very simple matter, really. At the end of the day, what you can do is just mentally impose a clock on it and then have your keyword. So if it's like the keyword dive, I don't see that as really getting to the core of the matter. The keyword is research, right? And so what I would rather have one think about, I'm seeing that this light is going green and red. I don't know. Are we still connected? Let me know in the chat if we're actually talking to each other here. It's kind of going on and off here, red and green. But just in case not, or in case we are, motor on here. So is dive really the right keyword to get this? Okay, great. Thanks for confirming. I don't know why it's like green and then red and then orange and yellow. Is that the right word? Is this even the right tool? Is this the right process? So I think you're turning something into a concept that isn't a concept. It's a step, research, right? And then if you want to remember that you're looking for big ideas, well, is it really the case that you find big ideas, or is it that you translate your research findings into ideas? And then I would use a mind map to help me figure that out. And I think that that's probably the more direct way to do it. Realizing the idea, it would be the most direct and concrete thing, copywriting. And then the next thing would be research. And if I wanted to remember research, I would put it at 12 o'clock. Now, putting it at 12 o'clock is already a way of helping yourself remember it, because you have 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. But if you know the major, then you can have an image for 12 that you weave with your image. So not only do you know it was at 12 o'clock, but then you have an image that gives you both echoic or sonic or phonic elements to do your elaborative encoding. And you have conceptual levels, you have linguistic levels, you have semantic levels, etc., to use all the heavy-duty science language. And this is going to help you turn mind maps into memory palaces, so to speak, on the page. Then at 1 o'clock, you could have a different thing. You can just skip 1 o'clock and go to 3 o'clock if you need more space and you don't want to make it inelegant and crowded. It's very, very important. Thank you for confirming, Maricela. I appreciate it very much. I get a little distracted here with this light changing, and we have a new internet server here in the Magnetic Memory Method headquarters, not by my choice, but by choice of the building. It's been a bit frustrating. Might have to have a chat with them about that. All right. So Alpha President says, thank you so much. It's very useful the way you think about it. Thanks, Anthony. Well, thank you for the question. Thank you for joining us for Study Hacks. If you're joining us now, hit the thumbs up. Let me know if you have any questions whatsoever about Study Hacks or anything else. Go to magneticmemorymethod.com/SHL to register your spot if you want access to this exclusive training. And let's see here. Rarzip7Z says, if mind maps are to be used as organizers and idea generators, are they effective for note-taking? Are there more efficient ways to take notes? Thanks for asking that, Rarzip. I don't use them to take notes. Some people do. There's a guy, Antonio Libertino. I don't have the image ready for you, but he did a mind map of one of my presentations, one of the live training sessions I've done. And I should share that at Study Hacks, because he took notes on what I'm doing using mind mapping, and there's a fun little drawing of me in the center. So I'll have to share that with you. But I don't take notes that way. If you go to magneticmemorymethod.com/note-taking, you'll see some of the note-taking strategies that helped me so much in university. And they're very, very useful. So please check that out. And yeah, I think you'll find that that helpful. So, Out for Presidents is pointing question, if mind maps are to be used as organizers and idea generators, are they even effective for note-taking? And yeah, efficientized so much, for my exams that I sat for my PhD, but it's also just part of how we get that mental organization. And it's part of how we then have that information in a way that we can access it again for multiple purposes in the world. So I'm going to keep that exclusive for those who are there. All right. So Liziane says, I need to memorize 8,000 pages in 2 months, but I've reached my limit. I'm using memory palaces and other resources. There's some sort of limit for how much we can memorize. How to overcome this? I do not believe there is a limit to how much we can memorize. However, and thank you for being here. Thanks for your question. What do you mean 8,000 pages in 2 months? Please be as specific as possible. Are you talking about every single word on that page, or are you talking about something more specific than that? Because 8,000 pages doesn't sound realistic, doesn't sound like what anybody would require or what anybody would do. Now, I know that there's some people who talk to me about how in the Spanish legal system this is absolutely required, and there's all sorts of people, but they're not able to send me the names of anybody who has actually recited 8,000 pages from the top of their head. And until that time comes, I'm a bit skeptical that that's actually required. So please let me know more about what you mean. And SDFG says he did it all through undergrad, mind mapping. Yeah, I mean, by all means. Basically, if you think about how I did note-taking, I did a fusion of things, and some of them were mind mapping-esque. By the way, we'll talk about, I got to make a note to do it, but one thing that we need to talk about is this style of mind mapping, which now basically we could call it the seashell mind map. So let me put that on my notes to add to study hacks, because I wasn't really thinking about talking about mind mapping, but maybe we should just add on a couple notes about it, because you can do mind mapping in some unique and original ways. And I really like this way. Beautiful. So, and this is the kind of thing that we normally only see much of inside of the Magnetic Memory Method mastermind. So Keko was very, very kind to share this. And this is actually her mind map of the Magnetic Memory Method, which is very, very powerful. To see it at a glance in a seashell using the seashelling technique. All right. So if you want to join us and have more about that, join us. And you can get information about that at magneticmemorymethod.com/SHL. I'm really excited to do this for the people who are interested, who qualify. If you missed the beginning of the live stream, we talk about what the qualifications are. You can watch the replay if you like. And I'm not going to necessarily go deep into mind mapping, but we'll talk about it. And I got some gifts for those who are in attendance too, some surprises. And now there's another surprise, because we'll add some discussion of mind mapping. All right. Out for President says, I will check your website for more resources. Excellent. Yeah, a lot of people seem not to be aware that there's actually a search function on the website. And, you know, there's a lot of information there. One of the things that I've noticed over the years is that free isn't the answer. All the free information in the world can inspire you. It can plug holes, give you more insights, etc. But it doesn't seem to be the actual factor that causes very many people to get results. And I'm like that too. I mean, I now go to the gym without a trainer, but I never could have gotten myself to lose all the weight that I've lost without having had not only dietary help, consulting, and also an actual personal trainer for quite some time to learn the skills. And then what's neat about it is, because I made that investment in myself, I showed up enough that it got into my procedural memory, and I was freed from the need from either of those people. And I'll tell you, the first thing that I would do if I fell off the horse and got fat again and, you know, needed that help again, is I would invest in someone who would train me and hold me accountable, and allow that actual investment to hold me accountable, because there's, skin in the game, and you want to be able to get more of it. And that's why I think we're seeing this phenomenon of super chats, people supporting the work, even though they're already in the Magnetic Memory Method masterclasses, because they know that they'll digest information more, I believe, because of greater investment, greater skin in the game, and also just because of the good chemicals it opens up in the brain. I don't want to second guess or insult them by sort of investigating into why that phenomenon is happening, but part of it is just the fact that it's just free is not something that works. We've seen this on the internet. All that has happened to humans on the internet is that we're now getting to a position where the internet is tearing itself apart, and we may not even be able to enjoy it in the future, which is very, very sad. It breaks my heart. I thought that if, I have the ideals of the university in my heart. I went to university to the top possible level and then a little bit more by getting a second MA, because I love the ideas of the university. And the internet was, to me, just this giant university. But we see that actually it's just become a breeding ground of dissent and people arguing over nothing and not actually consuming the information that's there. They're not actually doing stuff with it, which is insane. But it actually just shows that it's not about the information. On Quora, somebody had asked, why aren't these memory techniques taught in schools? And I answered and I said, it's not really the case that they're not taught in schools. Some memory techniques are taught in schools. The medical industry of schooling is filled with mnemonics. There's all kinds of companies that you can pay top dollar and they'll give you mnemonic examples. It's a fraud, in my view, that they do that, because that's not how memory techniques work. Will it work a little bit? Yeah, maybe. Will it help some people be encouraged to use it more? Maybe, but it's not really the secret. It's not the key that makes people do the work and show up and do the work. They need to find a way to motivate themselves. They need some sort of magic, right? And I really am very, very interested more and more in what these guys, these Hermetic people, were all on about with their alchemy, with their transformation, turning something from one state into the other. And I want to explore this more and more with people to see what is going to actually get you to get yourself to take action, so that you can get inside these techniques, so that you can actually have them work for you. What are the buttons that need to be pressed in order to get people to invest in themselves? Not only what it takes to be able to join sessions like Study Hacks Live, but also what it takes to then apply that information consistently enough to use it. All right. So SDFG says, memory techniques were how I got it for test purposes. All things evolve. I really like this. Excellent, excellent. And that's what it's about, really, actually. I love that you're using that word evolution. It's so much about evolution. And are you going to be the one who evolves yourself? You got to evolve yourself. I'd like to just actually share a little bit from the beginning, the introduction. He says, Scott Gosnell in his introduction, heuristic rule number 1 of looking at the history of magic and science is that people in the past or in other places or cultures are just as smart or as stupid as people are today. Rule number 2 is you can generally trust their observations, but you should be skeptical of their explanations. And rule number 3 is they all had senses of humor, like to tell tall tales, and make things up to cover for ignorance or to prevent embarrassment. And I think that's very, very interesting in this context, because when we're thinking about how to transform ourselves, we often think that, the past was better, or we romanticize the past and then we romanticize the future. The future will be better. But as he says here, people in the past or other places, other cultures are just as smart or as stupid as people are today. Who are the really smart people in the world today? What is intelligence in the world today? In my view, the real smart people are the ones who find ways to make things work. They have some sort of vision of what they want. They then know that you need to set goals, but they know that goals aren't enough. And so then they set milestones that enable them to reach those goals in progressive ways. And then they create systems that allow them to do it even when they don't feel like it. And creating that picture is really, to me, the best possible definition of intelligence that we have. And people were just as good at it hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, as we are now. Heck, they built pyramids. How the heck did they do that? They must have had something like that. A vision for what they wanted to get done, some sort of goal that was broken down into milestones, and then they had some sort of system that allowed them to get it done even when people didn't feel like doing it. Okay? So it's just, this is not complicated. It's not complicated. Rule number 2 is that you can trust their observations, but you should be skeptical of their explanations. That's very, very important to understand too, if we're thinking about the magic of transforming ourselves, right? So I'm not sure that that skepticism means that we don't trust their explanations, but skepticism, in my view, means not only do we actually try what it is that they're saying, but that we do it sufficiently enough that we do it long enough to actually give it a real try. And that's what I think skepticism is. Skepticism is that we are going to try to create that evidence for ourselves. So I always like these shows, like where they try to rebuild the pyramids. Well, if they did it this way, what would it be like? So then they actually, do a small scale pyramid to try it out. That's what we need to do with memory techniques. We need to look at what others have done with this tradition. That's why I'm reading Bruno so much more now, again, to try and figure out more what's going on there, actually doing experiments, applications, seeing what that was like, against my own preferences, against my own willpower, so to speak, because there are ways that I prefer to operate, using more outdoor memory palaces, for example, to stretch, to explore, and it's very, very important and powerful to do so. And that's what a real skeptic is. That's what a real intelligent person does, is they don't just poo-poo things because, oh, that sounds irrational. They actually go out and try. Now, I'm not talking about everything. I'm not talking about trying things that are dangerous or harmful. But in terms of mental operations that are known to work, there's all mountains of scientific evidence, 28 years of world memory championships, etc., people breaking records year after year after year. And they say, well, if they can do it, what is it they're doing? Then find out what it is, and then follow those steps and make it work. Make it work. All right. And then we've got the third thing here, which is that they also had a sense of humor, like to tell tall tales and make things up to cover for ignorance or to prevent embarrassment. So I was thinking about that, and that's why I shared with you, I let you look at my transcripts today, look at my PhD. I'm not telling any tall tales, and I certainly had a few B's and B pluses and even a D plus, and I'm not embarrassed about that at all. I learned so much by having a D plus, and it's not about having a perfect memory. It's about having a progressive memory, a memory that you're fine-tuning so that when you get to old age, you look back over your life and you say, man, I used my brain. I fine-tuned it to the best of my abilities. I really invested in myself. I was laying the foundation, learning something new every single day, getting it into my long-term memory so I won't forget it to the best of my ability. And then I was turning it outward to help others because I was a person who enabled myself to do so. That's the magnetic memory method mission for all people. And that's magic. That's, as far as I understand this, that's the ultimate understanding of magic there. And so it's very, very interesting. Anyway, and I look at some of the other people and, they don't have a PhD, they don't have 2 MAs and so forth. And I don't say that to brag or anything like that, because I really don't care. I know lots of people that have PhDs. It's not that extraordinary. But I also find a dearth of academics teaching memory techniques when they could. So we're very blessed to have Lynn Kelly, who also has a PhD, who's doing this. So if you haven't read any of her books, please do, because they're similar in terms of application to large learning projects, to knowledge. And it's just kind of rare in today's world, and I just don't know why. And I've read so many books on memory science, and the oddest thing is that they say, well, we've studied these techniques, but we don't actually use them ourselves. It's just like, really? Why? Boris Conrad, he's a competitor who is a scientist, and I hope he'll write a book. And there's more coming, and the more we get together and the more we help spread this, the more they're welcome. I thought of going to get another PhD in neuroscience, and I certainly could do it in record time. There's no doubt about it. But then I just think, is that really the best possible application of my time? Couldn't I just use my head to maybe think about more ways to help more people learn these techniques? And I've got, again, Buzan's brain cell here to inspire me to keep focused on the biggest possible things that one could do to help the world. And so that's what Study Hacks Live is all about. I hope you'll register. I hope you'll join us if you haven't already. Rarzip says, hey, thanks for your answers and live stream in the Study Hacks Live in the future. I registered and now I'm signing off for the night. Great. Thank you for joining us. Really excited to see you there. Out for President says, by the way, everyone, Anthony's podcast has a gigantic amount of episodes packed with actionable information. Thanks for mentioning the podcast. Yeah, it's getting to be a lot of episodes now. And sometimes I think of retiring it, but, we'll see how that goes. I would love to know what people would like to hear more of on the podcast and so forth. I've done some surveys from time to time. The majority of people say, don't change a thing, keep doing it, please, et cetera, et cetera. And kind of got to go with the majority there. But I don't know. I sometimes think of maybe at least taking a sabbatical from it for a while, but I'm not sure. In any case, thank you for pointing out that it's there. And yeah, it's a huge back catalog. I don't know if anybody would ever even be able to listen to all of it, but that would be interesting if anybody had through the whole thing. I'll tell you, there's one person who's listened to all of it, and that's the person who had to speak it all. And I enjoyed every minute. All right. So I am really, really looking forward to Study Hacks Live. I thank everybody who is here today. Thank you for our super chatters. I really appreciate that, from SDFG and Chrome Woman Walking. It's been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I would point out again that, in addition to all that support that comes above and beyond, we also just got to recognize the productivity that this has all created. So let's take a little bit of a pause while I get a drink and have a listen to Brain Games.
Let the games begin! I define, establish, exercise, and practice. Externalize spatial maps as I attack the path of mature learner. Bottle burner, max memory reserve, and earnest. I'm a furnace, an anomaly, sibling of Simonides known to reduce cognitive load. And oh, how I rotate, juggling space, making a case for brain games so digital amnesia leaves ya. Digital dementia is censured. Did y'all tag Herenium on your mind wall? Review, recall, we will evolve. Brain games, synapses flashing, mind palace crashing with brain games. Info encoded, mental high roller. Brain games, synapses flashing, mind palace crashing with the brain games. Info encoded, mental high roller. This is not a game you can afford to lose. Why? Brain games, don't need an app for that. I just attack with the path of a lab rat. I mean scientist, I'm an annihilist, finalist, illuminist, numinous, doing this, proving this, who is this scholar? Dopamine fiend, clean sheen like the Pleiades, enemies, illities, killing with abilities, strolling with affinity, rolling with McKinney. Brain games, healthy snacks, build a palace, pick some facts, learn to balance while you rap, unleash talents, don't look back. Brain games, synapses flashing, mind palace crashing with the brain games. Info encoded, mental high roller. Brain games, synapses flashing, mind palace crashing with the brain game. Info encoded, mental high roller. Scholar. MagneticMemoryMethod.com.
We're back. Thanks for that little pause there. And thank you to Christian Fitzharris for the Brain Game song. Always appreciate being inspired by that. I find it very, very inspiring to listen to it. And I hope that you enjoy that as much as I do. Maricela says, thank you. Well, one of the things that I've always really enjoyed about music is how it's a place to go. It's a place to go and a place to be. And so it's one of the biggest honors and privileges to always have that solace that music can bring. And I'm really glad to be playing music again. My hands are a little bit, getting arthritic, but it's good to spend some time nonetheless playing. Otherwise, the old evil Dr. Forget will get hold of my memory of music, and that's not good, because it's a lot of what shall we say, muscle memory, as well as other levels of memory. So let me know if there are any last questions before I head out, and I will look forward to seeing all of those who have registered for Study Hacks Live. Again, it's devoted to helping students in particular, lifelong students, students in university now, and there's an opportunity to contribute more to the Magnetic Memory Method project if you would like, and there's going to be some surprises on the session as well. And if you can't make it, then there is going to be access to the replay exclusive to you. This has a password, obviously, so that it is honoring those who join us live. And if you have any follow-up questions, let me know. In the absence of any further questions, I will thank, again, SDFG and Cronwoman Walken for their super chats today. Always very appreciative of the support of this work. This work is very, very important, I believe, for the survival of our species as information ramps up, and as it looks like the internet will be broken up into 9 or 10 different versions of itself, because people just can't seem to play along very nicely with things as they are. I don't know what's going to happen there. I hope that we can find a way to keep it as a seamless internet, but just imagine, as you think about what it is you want to do in life and how you want to do it, if the internet were to go away and you had to think, okay, well, which search engine am I going to use for this? Well, you're not going to have the ability that we have now, this idea that, I'll just look it up. Just looking it up is bound to get more and more complex if the internet is fractured in the way that it looks like it might be. And so books will become much more convenient again. And you see in society so much what's sometimes called the revenge of analog. And we see this need to get back to the physical, because we're just not dealing as well with information online. As much as they try to streamline it and so forth, I see it doing a lot of damage. They call it digital dementia, but I prefer to call it digital amnesia, because amnesia can at least be cured. So it might be a positive thing if the internet changes to something where the search for information is just completely inconvenient and we go back to libraries and so forth. Either way, we want to be prepared for the day when we need information, regardless of what's going to happen. I don't think that memory implants are going to be a positive thing to have. I don't think they're going to be something that we want. We're going to have so many surgeries that are involved just to get it in there, and then there's going to be all kinds of maintenance surgeries that are going to be of zero fun whatsoever. So I'm betting on wanting to have the best possible brain that I can have, the best possible memory that I can have, and really, really invest every minute of every day possible in fine-tuning the mind itself so that it's structured and focused and has a lot of clarity. So that's what we'll be talking about on the Study Hacks Live session. Thanks, everybody, for being here today. And until we have a chance to speak again, keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.
Hey, everybody. So I'm here in the Atlanta airport. I was just thinking about how grateful and thankful I am for what Anthony did for me. I do seminars all across the country. Usually have about 100 to 300 people every single weekend, and one of my biggest goals was to be able to memorize their names, and started studying some stuff and learning, and it wasn't connecting as fast as it needed to, and I just wasn't connecting the dots, and I started doing some research online, and there I found Anthony. And Anthony, I just want to tell you thank you very much for all that you've done. Now, man, my memorization is through the roof. I've almost reached my goal of getting 300 people at one time. I'm not exactly there yet. I'm off just by a few, but I'll get there as I keep practicing and keep connecting what I've learned from you and what you've put and you've helped me with. And so I just want to tell everybody, if you're looking to take your memory palaces and your memory techniques to the next level, I mean, Anthony's the guy. If he can help me go from not even remembering people's names, and that's the biggest issue of my life in my seminars, to actually being able to memorize over 100 and something people's names, close to 200. Man, he can help any of you guys out with anything. So I just want to give a shout out to Anthony. Very thankful, very grateful for meeting you. Very thankful for the fact that as soon as I sent you an email, you responded very quickly, very promptly. You just opened up your time and gave me a scheduled time very quickly also. And the support afterwards was well above and beyond. I mean, you could have ended it right there, but he didn't. He kept emailing me and make sure I was okay, and would send me emails periodically to make sure that I was following up and following through. So again, just want to thank you very much, Anthony. As I'm walking through this airport, getting ready to jump on a plane to Seattle, I was just thinking about how grateful and thankful I am for you being in my life and for helping me take those steps to the next level. And if anyone is out there is ever thinking about, should I work with Anthony, the answer is absolutely, unequivocally yes, beyond the shadow of a doubt. I could probably keep going on and on. But again, thank you, Anthony. And I really appreciate you. You've been a blessing in my life.